Behavioral problems in horses can be a challenge for owners, whether these problems are a result of a horse coping with a stressful situation, maybe adjusting to a new owner, maybe a new stall or arena at a show. Previously, there were few options available to horse owners. Tonight, we are pleased to introduce you to a new tool to help manage problem behavior in your horse. And you'll get to meet during the hour one of RFD TV's The American 2016 sponsors. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Rural America Live. I'm Mark Oppold. Thanks for joining us tonight. We welcome Zylkene to our show. The very first time you say, I've not heard that name on RFD TV before. Good reason. They're joining us for the first time, and we're glad to have them here. Tonight, joining me live in studio, Dr. Eric Alsop and Dr. Jim Lowe with Zylkene Animal Health. Welcome to RFD TV.
Thank you, Mark.
In fact, Doctor, let me reach out to you and officially, on behalf of Patrick Gotch, our founder, welcome you to our network. It's always great to have new company, new product, and that we are sure will do exactly what you're going to say it does, and our audience looking forward to hearing more.
It's great to be part of the RFD family.
You bet. Well, let's get to know you both a little bit better, starting with you and a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you, Mark. I grew up in rural Kansas and did what lots of kids do growing up in rural Kansas. I showed horses, a little bit of livestock, participated in 4-H and FFA, was very much involved in agriculture and everything to do with it.
Right.
I ended up heading down to Kansas State to get my undergraduate and my veterinary degree, and then was in practice for several years, focusing mostly on equine practice. And even during those years, as my wife Tina and I started to raise a family, we were right back into horse activities with the kids at that too, right back into 4-H, FFA, other livestock, and a heavy focus on horses. It's always been a big part of our life.
Yeah, the horse and just being involved, two great organizations, FFA and 4-H, you can't get better than that.
Exactly right.
And so from there, competing in around the country here, I understand, the family.
We stayed mostly in the Midwest, but in addition to open shows and 4-H competition, especially my wife and daughter have competed in AQHA shows in Kansas, Oklahoma, a little bit in Texas, and just the wonder for me is to make it's made it such a family activity for us. So horses and family just go together for us.
Absolutely. And we mentioned that you were a supporting sponsor of the American. Had to be quite an experience recently at AT&T Stadium.
It was just great. Great experience for all of us there.
Yeah. We've got some video here of Wade Sundell, and here you are on stage presenting the $1 million check, $1 million plus there. You're on the end of it there. Again, quite an experience and quite a day.
Oh, it's so fun. With Wade and all the other champions, having such a big day just to be part of it was a special time.
I bet. Thanks again for the support.
Oh, you're welcome. Our pleasure.
You bet. All right, Dr. Jim Lowe joining us here as well tonight. Talk about your background. You mentioned earlier before, thanks for your family, your father being in the military and his service. That kind of took you around the country a little bit.
It sure did. I was born in Yuma, Arizona, and after Dad left the military for a short time, he worked as a cowboy on a ranch in northern New Mexico. He then entered the oil industry, and as such, ultimately, we ended up in Houston, Texas. So I received my undergraduate in veterinary training at Texas A&M. Upon leaving A&M, I was in practice for 18 years, primarily in mixed practice, but for a period of time did have a large animal mobile company where we focused exclusively on equine and bovine medicine. My wife at the time helped me run that company. She's a veterinary technician, so I'm blessed to have somebody that appreciates what I do for a living. She grew up showing saddlebreds in Florida. We have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter who hasn't met an animal yet that she doesn't like, so we've acquired 4 cats and a dog, and as well as our horse. So we've always appreciated the human animal bond. We appreciate kids and their horses, and as well we also appreciate the opportunities when we had in practice to deal with the 4-H and FFA kids.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were talking with me beforehand, Mark. We enjoy our support of 4-H and FFA, and your daughter is going to be in there soon. Have a picture of her in the saddle right there.
Yes, sir.
We saw earlier. So again, great support there. Technical support, just a real quick, maybe just what a day looks like with you do at the company?
Well, first part of the day starts in an airport somewhere, and from there, but my primary responsibilities are to support our sales force in the field with technical knowledge, to act as a liaison between them and the practicing veterinarian to try to help them better understand our products, help alleviate any concerns they may have, and how to best apply them in their daily practice.
Never ending. I'm sure that's the case there. Back to Eric, you and folks may tuning in and say, I have not heard of Etaquinol. Maybe they saw it on the American for the first time. Let's talk about the company a little bit.
Thank you for that. Etaquinol is fairly new to the industry in the United States, but has been around since 1933. It's actually one of the oldest animal health companies in the world, and it's still predominantly owned by the same family who founded it in France in 1933. In fact, the grandfather of our current CEO was a pharmacist whose father was a veterinarian. And that pharmacist was producing a few products for his dad, and then word got out that they worked pretty well, so they started spreading to the other veterinarians in the area, and then all of France, and then all of Europe, and then to North America. Now we're in 20 countries around the world, over 2,000 employees, and really a fairly prominent animal health company.
My goodness, yes. So, and in the USA, headquartered in Texas.
Yes, we're in Fort Worth. Our U.S. base is out of Fort Worth, Texas.
Very good. Jim, over to you. And you're telling me before coming on here, one of the things that really kind of impressed you and you wanted to make sure that we hit on tonight was that the employees, everybody involved in the company, either have an animal of some kind. A lot of them own horses.
Absolutely. Again, as an exclusively animal health company, we also just have a very strong support from our employees with horses. And that involvement ranges a variety of disciplines, the classic rodeo disciplines, calf roping, barrel racing, but some unique disciplines such as polo, competitive shooting, and certainly Western pleasure and reining as well. But a large number of our employees really do enjoy the horses.
Absolutely, and they may have some behavioral issues, I guess you'd say, from time to time, and again, they know where to go to address those. Let's start by talking about that. We're going to spend a balance of the hour here talking about Zylkene. Eric, let's start talking about that now, and you piqued my interest about this product, and maybe first of all, kind of spell it for those that are tuning in on radio, and even those watching want to make sure they've got it right.
You bet. I want them to get that part right. It's Zylkene.
All right. And talk about the story. How did the company's been around for 80 years.
Right.
Talk about this product and its history.
I think it's a fascinating history because Zylkene actually came out of research into why babies are calm even in the face of stress during and after nursing. A lot of work was done on that to figure out, is it just because like we all get sleepy after a big meal? Is it because of pheromones that are released? They went through a lot of studies and found that none of those explained it. It had to be something within the milk. So as they started to work through the properties of the milk and they were very in tune to staying in a very natural form of getting the product and doing the research. So as they went using natural enzymes to digest it, parts of the milk, they ended up with this unique compound that's in Zylkene that actually it allows a horse to get that same coping mechanism that a foal gets when it's nursing from its mom.
Makes sense, yeah. From the very beginning, and Mother Nature would have part of the answer, it sounds like.
Exactly.
You know, so how about easy to use for someone hearing and watching for the first time and hearing about this product? There's a lot of easy when you talk about application and the responses here that you're going to get. It's easy to use.
Well, Zylkene just comes in a pouch. So it comes in a 1 dosage pouch. It's easy to open up and it just pours out. It has a little bit of apple flavoring in it. So it has very high palatability.
Yeah, we'll move that over so make sure Jason get a nice good shot of that right there. So just a powder. Yeah.
It has a high palatability. We get great consumption of it. And it is a very easy product to use, very comfortable for the horse and the owner both.
Very good. How long has it been available, Jim?
The product has just been recently launched in the United States. Alpha-casozepine in its original form has been out there for almost 10 years in Europe.
And you brought it out in the U.S. how long ago?
The equine product was launched here very recently within the last year. Again, there's also a product on the companion animal side that's been in the U.S. now approaching 4 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there anything else out there that people might be interested or may be familiar with that would be similar to the product?
Not really. On the equine side, Zylkene's a very unique product. It's unique in that it's a milk-derived ingredient, that it's an all-natural ingredient supplement. It's unique in the fact that there has been a lot of research out there. There were studies done at the University of Pennsylvania looking at this, because one of the characteristics of the product is this product will help these horses cope better with a challenge, whether that challenge is trailering or training. And while using this supplement, they're more focused, thus they're better able to learn and retain that information down the line. Has a very wide safety profile, and as we just saw, very easy to administer.
Yeah, Eric was mentioning that, very safe. And I think we need to point out here, this is not a drug that has to be administered by a veterinarian or have a prescription to.
Correct. This is a non-prescription supplement that you can get through your veterinary channel.
Yeah. In fact, Eric mentioned the word natural a couple of times in his description, and I think that's another benefit, if you want to call it that this is a very natural product that works with Mother Nature, it sounds like.
Correct. It's mimicking a process, as he said, that newborns are actually experiencing themselves, and in doing so, again, we're trying to just equip them better to deal with pressures, stresses, and challenges they may see.
So how would a horse owner use it? Would they put it on during feeding time? Is that when they want to use this product?
Well, the product's recommended to be used once a day, so certainly whichever works best for the management of that, but it's once a day administration, absolutely. So that makes it easy as well for many that have busy schedules and also have additional responsibilities. But depending on the application, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, it can be started as early as 3 or 4 days before an expected event, but can also be used much longer as part of a training regimen as well.
So you can put it on in the morning on the feed and let the horse consume it, and you be good for the rest of that day. Then.
Absolutely, once a day administration. Yes,
and naturally based, used with other products. Is it safe to use with something else you might be using? Might not even be related, but it's safe to use whatever. It doesn't matter what the other product is.
That's correct. And again, because we're dealing with a supplement, an all-natural ingredient supplement, we don't have the expectation of interactions with other products. Many horses, if they're experiencing a lameness or separation anxiety that might be on other products, we can certainly use this in conjunction with that because, again, of the wide safety profile.
Again, a new product here. You're hearing it and seeing it for the first time here on RFD TV. Zylkene. We'll be opening our phone lines, by the way. This is Rural America Live, and you're a very important part of that. So I know you're taking careful notes, have questions for our veterinarians here, and we will be opening our telephone lines later this hour, not right now, but we'll be opening those up, and be sure to get as many questions answered as we can tonight. I want to talk a little bit more about the safety issues here, Doctor, because I know that's something you wanted to make sure there was, along with a lot of other things, we made sure we cover that with our audience.
Well, I think it is a key point. I think it's a key point for us as the company, for the veterinarians who recommend its use, and for the horse owners who are using it. So being a naturally derived product from milk, it is what it gives you the sense that it is. It's a very safe product that ties in with the way nature helps animals cope.
There you go. Yeah, and lactose-free. I had written down here too. Wanted to cover that.
Good point. As they broke down the different particles in milk, the lactose was left behind. It wasn't a key element in the activity we were looking for in this coping mechanism. So it's lactose-free because it doesn't use that aspect of the milk. Right.
You brought obviously a sample box here with you. This is what the viewers are going to find when they walk into their animal supply store or their veterinarian.
Right.
And it's going to this will be a common look for that name there, the Zylkene name with the horse on the box. And how many the box you brought with you tonight? How long might that? If they were going to use it once a day, how many packets are in?
Let me just say that it depends on the use, again, as Jim was referring. If there's an incident, they might need only a few packets to get through a couple days. If there's one event they're trying to solve. If they're using it for a longer period of time, they might end up with a box of 20 packets.
Very good. All right, again, we're going to open our phone lines right now, I am told, and rightfully so. So let's, again, get the phones ringing. Don't wait too long. The hour is going to go fast. We want to make sure if you have a question, again, for our veterinarians, you will be able to get into the program and have that question answered. 877-731-6733. We're going to open our lines right now. Lots more to talk about, but opening our lines for you, 877-731-6733. Over to you, Jim, back and talking about some of the situations, maybe helping our viewers a little bit more understand where might this be helpful to them.
Well, I think the applications for Zylkene are wide-ranging, and again, we're dealing with a tool to help these animals cope with any pressure or stress they may feel. And that challenge could be simply training, the pressures put upon them in the training ring, in developing new skill sets. So certainly it can be used with that because, again, research has shown these animals retain their ability to remember, to learn, and to retain information. But other things such as trailering, stall confinement, situations where there's new additions to the herd or there's separation of that herd, weaning, noise problems. We've had a lot of reports of help with needle anxiety because, again, we can use this as a tool to help desensitize potentially this horse to the sight of a syringe because, again, while on this supplementation, they fully acknowledge you coming up with an empty syringe case, for instance, and tapping them on the neck. So they realize ultimately that there's no reason to ramp up some of those anxiety symptoms they might normally display. So really, it's a tool to be used by the owner in any situation where they feel like that horse is showing some level of anxiety or feeling pressured.
And maybe repeated anxiety. That the same situation one of our staff members was mentioning, whenever he walks up to the horse with a bridle or a saddle, the horse will kind of pin his ears back and, doesn't want any part of being saddled or, doesn't want to be ridden. And that would be one example, I would think, where this might be a helpful solution. Absolutely.
Even if for periods of time we just brought that saddle and that halter out, just set it down and immediately removed it. We didn't necessarily place it on the back of that animal. The animal will begin to appreciate that that's not always a threat or a pressure to him.
And sometime, I guess initially learning about this the last couple of weeks, you think about different situations where there may be something physically wrong with the animal, or but it could be as simple, I say simple, as a thunderstorm, noise that might alert or set off some sort of a reaction by the horse.
Absolutely. And certainly we know on the companion side that storm anxieties and storm phobias are a very strong indication for Zylkene, where we have lots of success. But fireworks or any loud, sharp noises that horses become anxious about, again, there's an opportunity there for, while on this supplement, to begin to develop and expose them to perhaps higher levels of that noise and get them somewhat acclimated.
I would think even simply like loading a horse into a trailer. Sometimes we hear from people on our other equine shows that their horse just doesn't want to load, and our equine program spend a lot of time on that, horses that are hard to load.
Exactly, because again, the instinct when they feel pressured for a horse is to run or flee, and what we're trying to do is place them in a very uncomfortable situation with four walls and a roof. So again, when the opportunity is there to have them on this supplement, they acknowledge being loaded on that trailer, and with repetitive loading, they begin to appreciate the fact that the world does not come to an end when they get put on that trailer, because again, we're not doing anything to mask the fact from them that they are being loaded. They're just better able to cope with that.
Yeah, that's a really key point I'd like to emphasize from Jim's comments, is that, again, they learn while they're on this product. So typically if they're just sedated for those, they need to be sedated every time, whereas a horse that's been given Zylkene still retains that ability to learn. So our objective is not to have horses chronically on the product, but to help them through those situations while they have the benefit of Zylkene, so eventually they can come back off of it.
Very good. And with that, we want to make sure that our phone numbers are out there for you to take careful notes and give us a call if you'd like. I know phones are ringing. We'll be likely talking to you soon. 877-731-6733. And we have a caller on the line. This is Mike from the big red state of Nebraska. Hi, Mike. Go ahead. Oh, we lost Mike. Mike, give us a call back. I understand there's a little phone issue maybe on your end there. Got a big, is it okay to talk to a Big Red fan from a K-State Wildcat?
You bet.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a lot more to talk about. I want to talk about how you administer it a little bit more in detail. We're going to take a break here, though, 20 minutes after the hour, and come back and take your call. Take a short break. Again, lines are open, 877-731-6733. Mike, give us a call back, and others as well. New product, Zylkene, right here on RFD TV. Rural America Live continues after this. And welcome back to Rural America Live. I'm Mark Oppold. Again, Vetiquinol, the makers of Zylkene, joining us here for the first time on RFD TV. So you're watching history tonight, all of us together for the first time. We hope they're going to come back many, many times. Dr. Eric Alsop and Dr. Jim Lowe with us tonight from Vetiquinol Animal Health. Our telephone lines are open. Becky tells me the phone lines are ringing. You might get a busy signal. If you do, please keep trying. We want to talk to you. 877-731-6733. Again, toll free, 877-731-6733. It's a Rural America Live, and we want to make sure that we get your telephone calls in during the rest of this hour. All right, back to our new product tonight here, Zylkene Equine. How do you administer it? We kind of touched on that a little bit, Eric. Let's talk a little more about it.
So the ideal situation is when you can anticipate an event that's is going to cause anxiety for your horse. You can get the horse on the product 1 or 2 days before as a supplement. You're able to feed it to them 1 or 2 days before, and then the day of the event. So they have their bodies adjusted. They've had the calming, coping effect of the Zylkene leading up to the event, and they have it on board as they're facing that anxiety.
And just put it on their feed, basically,
Yes.
is how you actually administer it, to put it right on the feed.
Correct.
What about an example? I mean, I'm sure they said, you have a lot of stories you can share. We'll get a couple of those. Let's get one right now that you've seen yourself.
I can give you a couple quick ones.
All right.
I mean, there's been horses in training situations. We've even seen performance horses, even race horses, that will have some anxiety, such as big arenas, enclosed arenas, starting gates, where if they know the potential's there in the horse and they're able to work with that anxiety at home or at the training barn ahead of the event with Zylkene to help the horse deal with it and cope with that anxiety, many trainers have found that then they can get them through that process. Again, reflecting on the fact that Zylkene allows them to learn while it's helping them cope at the time. And then they don't need the product anymore. And that's really, again, our goal is to try to get them through these anxious situations, help them understand that that really isn't anything to be afraid of, and then be able to move on with their top performance.
Very good, yeah. So they may never have to use it again on that horse. They may have another circumstance where that horse might need.
Good point.
Just again, because it's the learning process. Sounds to me is that it's all about.
That's really our goal, is to use Zylkene as a tool to help horses cope and then learn that the situation they were afraid of isn't nearly as bad as they thought.
All right, let's go to the phones again. The line's open for you, 877-731-6733. Let's go to Tennessee for our first call. Yvonne, you're up first. Welcome.
Thank you. The question of it is this something like a calming agent? Because I got 5 horses. One of them I show in the academy, and when you get him in the ring, buddy, he goes dry 90. I mean, is that how it could work?
Yes, ma'am. Yes and no. I think certainly it is a calming product. The calming comes from the fact this horse is better able to cope with the situation. One thing that's important with Zylkene is to recognize its limitations and expectations. If the expectation is that this product is going to sedate an animal, you're going to see that horse breaking at the knees and looking obviously sedate. That is not what this product is for. The calming influence that Zylkene affords is, again, because we provided a tool for that animal to better acknowledge that pressure and be better able to deal with it. So certainly something in your situation you could potentially use at home in the practice pens, and you can assess if you see the value in it moving forward.
We know when Zylkene's working really well, you just get your horse back. You don't have sedation, you don't have the problems of some of the alternatives you've been forced to use. You just get your horse back, a horse that can cope with that anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, drooping or just
None of that.
You know what your horse looks like and feels like and acts like, and if
Right.
it doesn't, like you say, you get your horse back as well put.
Yep.
We're going to stay in Tennessee for our next call. Thanks, Yvonne, for setting the pace here tonight. That means as she leaves us, a line open for you. We go to a stay in Tennessee. This is Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my call,
You
Mark.
bet. Welcome, welcome. Go ahead.
I don't know if your product would be suitable for what my problem is. I have a 15-year-old mare and a 30-year-old gelding, both very, very healthy, and I like to ride them around the area. I've got a 35-acre ranch. They both suffer from barn sweetness, and if I get anywhere near the barn, and they can see the barn from most areas that we ride on, and, if I get them away from the barn entirely, they ride wonderfully, great trail riding horses. But get near the barn, and they really start struggling, and I've got to do a lot of reining, turns with one rein and get them to halt and get them away. Sometimes they do a little bucking and want to go in. So I don't know if I need to have some of this on board to keep them from doing that. It's a training issue more than anything else. That's why I say I don't know if your product is something that would be suited for this. And then what I have to do is get them outside, away from the barn, get them to hold for a little while before I try to ride away. But they do want, there's some stress involved in wanting to get back into the barn.
Oh, absolutely, and I think you almost answered your own question. Is certainly this is a training issue, but again, the benefit of Zylkene is you can place this on board to help them cope with that challenge while you implement your training strategies. You're just helping them because, again, for many horses, it's the training itself that puts the pressure on them. So this tool is not going to interfere what you already know needs to happen, which is the protocols you already have in mind. So to answer your question, yes, this could be used as a tool, but not solely as the answer.
And Dan, I think it's important to emphasize that Jim talked earlier about having the right expectations. The thing Zylkene can't do is correct chronic bad behavior. So some of the things you're working at, as Jim's already said, you may be able to reduce the anxiety the horses are feeling so they're more responsive and tuned into you, but it's not going to turn them around to where they're just going to slowly walk back to the barn. You're still going to have to implement everything else you're doing.
Well, so thank you for the call, Dan. So that example, he knows he's going to take the horse out, they're going to be riding, but coming back to that barn, would he want to put it on a little feed that morning before they ride? Would that, is it all the training thing?
Again, I would use it as we talked about before, and I think Jim would agree, a couple days ahead of time, and then the day he goes out on the ride. And what it's going to do, as those horses get closer to the barn and they get their anxiety going, there's their natural bad behavior of wanting to get to the barn, but now it's worked itself into an anxiety. And the part that Zylkene can help with is the anxiety part. Leveling them out, getting them back to focused on Dan and what he's trying to do.
And he does it a couple of times, can't wait to get back to the barn, maybe, huh? That would be the happy ending, maybe so. All right, we had Mike from Nebraska joining us earlier and lost connection there, so we're glad you tried back again, Mike. Thanks for doing that, and you're up next. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
You bet. Go ahead.
I was wondering, is anybody using this product in the draft horse industry? Where we have a lot of competition in the summer months, where we go to a lot of different state fairs, and it's pretty much different arenas. And
Certainly there's no indication why it would not be effective in the draft horses. We have recommended administration for horses over 1,100 pounds, which certainly those would fit. So again, I think the expectation would be absolutely that you're just going to help them better cope with whatever challenge it is, whether it's the changes in those arenas, the traveling anxiety, the changes in climate. But specifically to my knowledge, off the top of my head, don't have any direct feedback on the drafts.
So I would agree. In my pocket of stories, I don't have a lot of draft horse stories, Mike, but the situations you're talking about are some of the most common situations with which we've had success with Zylkene, wouldn't you say, Jim?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe an example. Thanks for the call, Mike, and getting back. A horse that you love to take him to parades, for example. He mentioned that in the summertime. But your horse gets a little giddy, maybe cars honking, kids screaming, whatever it might be. Talk about administering it in that situation. How would that help?
Again, we want to be ahead of the situation. Two things I want to emphasize. really focusing on the training ahead of the event, trying to create those situations in an artificial environment at home so you can let the horse deal with them with Zylkene on board with the help of Zylkene a couple of days ahead of the event and then the day of the event, so they have the benefit of Zylkene as they're facing that parade, that anxiety raising, that blood pressure raising event, that we can just help them cope with it in a better way.
Absolutely. Much of what we talk about, if you imagine the stress ladder they'll talk about. So in the situation you're describing, if our horse lives down here, but once it knows it's going to the parade, it begins to ramp up that ladder or go up higher on that stress ladder. What Zylkene is going to keep us from doing or allowing that horse to do is ramp up those symptoms and become perhaps unmanageable. If nothing else, the best case scenario may be just to keep him at his normal demeanor, which is what we want. We don't expect him to suddenly become sedate, as we've discussed.
Right.
But we just want, again, we want our normal horse with its normal demeanor and a good level of focus.
Take away that stress.
Yes,
Kind of
sir.
like going when I go to my tax man. Maybe I wish there was something like that I could take. Let's go to Alabama. Thanks for joining us tonight again, our friends, and introducing us to Zylkene. If you're hearing it, you are for the first time they've been on Rural America Live. Telephone lines are open to ask questions, and that's what the program is all about. They look forward to hearing from you. 877-731-6733. We go to Alabama, and Tony has called us. Hi, Tony.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm curious about my situation is a horse that gets very upset when you change location or anything on her, and how long of a loading dose to keep her calm in a new situation.
Well, I don't know that there's a specific answer for that. Again, I think it's a situation where, depending on where she is normally, you would probably be looking at more of an extended period of administration, and again, changing her environment as often as you can during that period. If it's just to make, say, perhaps one change, then, as he said, 2 days up to 4 to 5 days before the expected move is normally what's recommended. If it's much more of a chronic issue, as you describe, to place her on that for 2 to 3 weeks potentially, where you promote many times, multiple times a week, for instance, moving locations or moving barns, again, to allow her to better appreciate the lack of threat that comes with those types of moves.
And it all goes back to training as well. It's not like, well, I'm going to put this on my feed 2 days before the show and everything will be fine. If I don't do anything else. It doesn't work that way.
That's a great point, because what we don't want people doing is using Zylkene as a crutch. We want them to use it as a tool to really be tuned into their horses, and their focus should be, how can I help my horse get through this anxiety, through this anxious situation? As Jim said more than once, if you can create the situation at home, think of it as a training tool, not as a crutch.
Very good, like that. All right, Jerry from Arkansas, as the callers keep coming, and we're glad you are calling in tonight. Your questions help others. Well, I guess, Jerry, another one of those phones that dropped out. He's on a mobile phone up and down those hills, maybe in Arkansas. Jim, and you've kind of touched on this, but I want to go back to questions here we wanted to make sure we cover. How long should a horse be on Zylkene?
Well, ultimately, the expectation is to not have to keep a horse on Zylkene for an extended period of time. I think if we go back to our anxiety ladder, we talk about horses as individuals and what is the normal anxiety level of that horse. Certainly for short-term issues, again, starting as early as 2 to 4 days before an event, and the day of the event or the day of the move or the day of the trailering may be all that's needed. If this is a highly anxious horse and we're going to be really needing to do some in-depth training, then extended periods of time may be needed where there's no problem with going longer with the product, weeks at a time. Again, knowing you must be investing that much effort in your training protocols or your environmental management to try to address that. What we don't want people is to have the expectation of that this works within hours, and also, not to hammer or belabor the point, the expectation is you just have a more focused horse with a more normal disposition, your horse. Sometimes people's expectation are, once I give Zylkene then how do I know it's working? And again, it's not a horse that's obviously sedated or buckling at the knees again. So as early as a couple of days ahead of time, you should be able to appreciate just your horse is not reacting like they normally may do when you know they're nervous or worked up, whether that's pacing or sweating or blowing and other things that horses will do.
Yeah, like you said, Eric, you know your horse, and when that horse acts the same way every time, a different kind of behavior, when that horse acts different because of some training, you know it's working.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that sounds too simple, maybe, but it seems like...
To take it even a step further, we've talked a lot about 4-H and kids' activities on horses, and the last thing most of us would want as parents in that situation is to have our kid on the back of a horse that we sedated to deal with the behavioral situation. So to have Zylkene as an alternative and know that it doesn't have a sedating effect, that it has a calming, coping effect, that also retains the ability to learn, just gives those of us behind Zylkene a great feeling.
And people who weren't with us at the top of the hour, that calming effect coming from research done with foals' milk. Foals are very, I won't say docile, but they're very calm with that early milk, and that's kind of where this history comes from.
It sure did. So you know, if you go into a pasture, a paddock with mares and foals, the foals are all over the place. And then they pretty soon find their mom, and they nurse, and they settle right down. Well, Zylkene allows the adult horse to have that same calming effect for the same reasons. It's derived from an element of milk that gives that effect in a dose that can be given to an adult horse.
Very good. All right, back to the telephones and to Pennsylvania. Debbie, thanks for holding on, and you're up next. Welcome. Are you there, Debbie?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, you're up. Go ahead.
I just want to know if the horses get addicted to that, and if they're on it for a while, if you have to wean them off of that, or if they could have like an addictive behavior to that.
No, ma'am. And again, we're talking about an all-natural ingredient supplement. This is not a drug. Zylkene does nothing to change the brain's chemistry, and so there is no tolerance to the product. There's no risk of addiction with the product. There's no need to wean the animal off of the product. So if we place them in the scenario of 3 days before a pasture move, and we use it the day of, you can stop it immediately. There's no need to wean them off of it, because again, we're not doing anything to disrupt the natural processes that's going on in their brain.
Very good. Thanks for the call, Debbie. And as she leaves us, that means there is a line open for you, and that means a line at 877-731-6733. We're going to take another break here in just a minute, but before we do that, we've kind of talked about trainers as well.
Right.
What about people who are using horse trainers and this product, and how to intertwine those?
It's a key element, because a horse that's more focused is going to be taking in the training more effectively. So everybody has to work within their trainer's realm if they have a trainer working with their horse. But most horses, especially if they're responding with some anxiety to that training, have some fearfulness for whatever reason. Being able to break through that, help the horse cope with that so they can focus on the training and learn from it more effectively, is really what Zylkene does.
Very good. Indeed, that's the product, Zylkene. You're hearing it for the first time. We'll take our second break here, so telephone lines still open. Again, if you still get that busy signal, please keep trying. 877-731-6733. Rural America Live continues with your questions right after this. Welcome back to Rural America Live. Our friends from Vetiquinol, makers of Zylkene, joining us for the first time tonight. And I think I'm going to give myself a gold star for keeping all that straight here for 1 hour.
You deserve one.
But we're great to have them with us here for the first time on RFD TV. And many times you call Patrick Gotch and say thank you for all the great programming, the music, the entertainment, the horse programs, and how can we ever say thank you? Well, you can thank Patrick and RFD TV by trying these products. If you need those, again, it's a matter of need, going to your animal health supplier, talk to your veterinarian about Zylkene, tell them that you heard about it and watched RFD TV and want to know more about it. You may have a use for it on your farm or ranch. That's how, again, you can thank RFD TV, and by using the products that we bring you on Rural America Live. Where can they get these, by the way, Eric?
Well, with a reminder note, Zylkene's a natural supplement, not a drug, and it's not a prescription product, but it is sold through veterinarians because we think a veterinarian's input into the total picture for managing behavior issues is very important. So we market the product through veterinarians.
Very good. So I'm correcting there, not through animal health supplier, but to your veterinarian.
Correct.
Because of all the things you just mentioned. Very good point. All right, let's go to New York. We head to the east there, and Tom holding on through that break. And thanks for doing that, Tom. You're up next.
You're welcome, Mark, and thank you for doing what you do, and thank RFD TV for being the best network ever.
Appreciate those words.
I'm a field trialer. I'm sure many of your viewers do not know what that is, but I train and handle dogs off of horseback. The biggest problem that I don't have problems trailering. I don't have problems with gunfire. I don't have a loud noise. What I have a problem is herd bound. I have a problem with herd bound when you got to break away, you got to break a horse away from the pack and go look for a dog. That's the biggest problem I have. And I have a very, very good horse who works well in a herd, but when you try to break him away, when you get him alone, you get him out in the woods, you get him out in the field, and there's no other horses around, he flips, and I'm hoping maybe this might be able to help me. That's my question.
Well, I'll take a stab at that for you, Tom. And again, it goes back to the one we talked about with barn sour or barn sweet, as it was said, horses. There's an element of that is behavioral and training, as you well know. But there is an element that those horses, when they get that feeling, a lot of anxiety is built up, a lot of nervousness. You can feel that tension build. And what Zylkene can do in some situations is really help take that tension away, help the horse stay focused and cope so that it's focused on you and you can do the right things to correct the behavior and get it moving away from the rest of the herd and going where you need him to go. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So again, and I'm curious, how would Tom take those steps one at a time in a training type atmosphere to get the horse used to being pulled away from the pack, if you will?
Yeah, right. So if Tom's able to set up his field trial situations at home, that would of course be ideal. He can have other people with the other horses, be giving Zylkene 2-3 days ahead of time, and the day of the event of his field trial, at-home practice, so that as he's going out, he's keeping control of the situation. The Zylkene should help him maintain calmness in the horse so that the horse can stay thinking, keeping the right frame of mind to be tuned in and not panic. Because the problem with these horses is, as we fight them to try to get them to behave the way we want them to, we raise that anxiety. They go up the stress ladder, as Jim talked about, and if we can just keep them from climbing that stress ladder, so we keep them down, they stay the horse we know, then we have a chance of dealing with those behaviors.
Might be a case where little by little he may still have a little bit of that fight, if you want to call it that, when they leave the pack, if you will.
Right.
But the next time, if he can use it, again, the next time you might see that horse, maybe not so much tension and stress, and eventually, if because it sounds like Tom's a repetitive, hunt or whatever, using that over time the horse is going to, as you said, learn that it's okay.
Well said. If things go well for Tom, he's going to do this with the horse having been supplemented with Zylkene. The horse is going to go out and find out that the world didn't fall apart when it's separated from the rest of the herd and say, I guess that's actually okay.
I can do this. Tom's
and then
okay.
gradually over time, I can trust this guy and move away gradually and hopefully decrease the need for Zylkene over time.
Tom's not trying to take me out in the country and lose me in the woods or someplace like that.
Right.
Thanks for that. Again, hopefully helpful to lots of others who are tuning in tonight, Tom. Thanks for the call. We're going to go to Montana for our next call. This is Terry. Terry, welcome to our program.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you for taking my call. Hey, my specific question, but it also will relate to barrel and roping horses, but I'm a licensed trainer. We have challenges sometimes taking the horses to the track. We do a lot of training at home. We head to the track, and some of them stress out quite a bit. There's certain products that we've tried. Really, I can't see a difference in those. But if we could get something to help those horses calm down, to give the horse so they can compete, my question is, would that help in that competition? But the second part of that question on the race horses, if you win the race, they're going to be tested. How would this test?
Well, I think it's a two-part question. Certainly, I think, again, if we go back to that stress ladder, what you're talking about are these horses that begin to, as they sense the event is coming, begin to elevate up that ladder. And as they do, those physiologic processes begin to stimulate all sorts of activity in them. So certainly Zylkene is appropriate to, again, potentially allow them to better cope with that pressure they're feeling of an upcoming event. I also appreciate the other question about the testing, and it really gives us an opportunity to emphasize the fact that this is not a performance-enhancing device. This is meant as a tool to work in the ring to better allow you to train these animals to cope with the challenges that are part and parcel for what they do for a living. That being said, this is an all-natural milk ingredient, and as such, testing should not be a concern.
Yeah, for folks who weren't with us at the top of the show, Dr. Eric, let's talk about that. It's where the history of the product comes from and how they can feel safe and at ease using it.
Well, as we talked about, Mark, the science came from observation of babies of multiple mammal species and the calming effect that they got, even in the face of anxiety, the calming effect they got from nursing. And as it was broken down, it didn't come, they were able to rule out pheromones, they were able to rule out the post-eating sleepiness we get. They knew it had to be an ingredient in milk. And as they went through, they found that the active ingredient in Zylkene was the one that could bring on that same effect in an adult horse, in a horse of any age that was no longer nursing, but get that same effect that a baby foal gets, that calming effect a baby foal gets when it nurses its mother.
Very good. You mentioned it's like after we eat a big meal, we kind of want to sit back and sit in the easy chair and just calm down after a big meal.
I want to emphasize that that's not the effect that it gets, because we actually get that because of a physiological effect of that stretching our stomach, and this can do it without any of that. There's a couple of grams of active ingredient there, so it's not the same effect of just having a full belly. It really is the effect of the ingredient that's there. And it has a calming effect on a baby that we're now fortunately can reproduce in an adult horse.
Very good. Thanks for your great point there. And let's see if it's on the minds of Beth here. We go to Texas for our next call. Hi, Beth. How are you tonight?
I'm great. How are y'all?
Yeah, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
I have a question. I have a barrel horse. We compete, and at home he works great. But when we travel somewhere within the state or even to a local show that's pretty close, he just gets the anxiety built up, whether he's at the trailer or even trying to take him up the back of the alleyway. And so I really don't ever have a full focus of his mind. And so even though the more I haul him, it doesn't seem to help that situation. But is this something that I could use on a routine basis, and maybe eventually he would outgrow that by using this product?
Well, I think there's certainly an application there, absolutely, in using it and incorporating with, as you said, trailering him as much as possible. Perhaps trailering him to arenas where there's not a race to be run and turning him out for a little while and bringing him home. Again, whether it's the trailering or the smell of the tack or you putting feed in the front of the trailer, all of these things are beginning to ratchet him up, so it may not even be the actual performance itself. So anything you can do, as Eric has said, to mimic those activities with the supplement on board, yes, potentially he should begin to appreciate that there's not a threat there, that there's not the pressure there, and you should slowly detect a change in him, and again, a more normal, more focused horse that's able to do what you've trained him to.
Would it make any difference, a performance horse reacting even quicker to the product, Doctor, than a pleasure horse might? I mean, there seems to me that a performance horse is in that environment and maybe they learn quicker because their performance, or I'm not sure that makes sense or not. But
so you might you might detect a more dramatic effect just because the negative behavior is more dramatic. A horse, a trail riding horse, might spook at an object that could be helped with Zylkene, but the barrel racing horse might really come unglued. Some even flip over. So you might detect that as a more dramatic effect, but what's going on inside the horse is really the same positive benefit that's getting to that end point.
Very good. Great questions here. Thanks for one and all. And we're not done yet. Let's go to Illinois. Ann, thank you for calling.
Thank you for taking my call. My question is regarding an aged horse, say from 9 years old and up, going on trails. Getting started would be fine, and then she kind of loses herself and becomes a little very anxiety attacks almost. Will this do that, and how would that hinder her being able to do the trails?
Well, certainly it's not going to hinder her activity. Again, we're not going to affect her or provide her any level of sedation or disrupt her footing by any stretch. And what you're going to be able to do with Zylkene is whatever, again, on the trail begins to trigger those sort of anxieties in her, you can mimic those as much as possible through repeated rides or more local rides. And again, whatever is doing whatever those triggers are, she acknowledges those triggers, she recognizes them, but because she's on Zylkene, she just is better able to cope with those triggers, and in the long term, be much more level, and again, ultimately not need the product.
We talk a lot about coping and calmness. Some people talk about it giving their horses courage, and that may be what you're looking for, Ann. Actually just getting the courage to be able to face some of those obstacles on the trail. So I think you've got a situation that fits Zylkene very well.
Very good. Thanks for all the callers tonight. We're heading to the top of the hour, and more to talk about here with our guests. In fact, just real quick, we have a lot of pet owners out there. I know, just Jim, you wanted to cover just briefly that Zylkene is available for pet owners, dogs, cats as well. What about that?
Absolutely. Zylkene was originally released in the United States for the companion animal side, and we're now coming up on about 4 years. It's the same active ingredient, certainly at a much lower recommended administration level, but available for both cats and dogs in a capsule form. But we really promote you to mix that in their food. It'll readily dissolve in water as well. But for situations such as travel anxiety, storm phobias, social anxieties, lots of work done with cats with inappropriate elimination issues that's stimulated by stress, but quite a bit. And again, a product that has well-run research behind it that is very positive.
And again, Dr. Eric, they would go to the veterinarian and ask about that. What may be just a couple of examples where they might use it in their home?
I'll give you one from my own home. We had an Australian Shepherd, very beloved pet in our home, who, as he got older, got a fireworks and thunderstorm anxiety. We were just bringing on Zylkene, so decided to give it a try. And not only did the Zylkene take him through those incidents and calm, got our dog back, to use my previous phrasing on the horses, but we were able to take him off Zylkene after a few of those events and have him no longer need it and no longer have those anxieties. Other examples are separation anxiety is a big one that sometimes people will use it. Again, the association, regardless of species, is there an anxiety that's really stirring these behaviors in the animal?
Very good. Yeah, we know we have lots of pet owners. You love your pets, so we wanted to make sure just to touch that briefly tonight before we left you. And we are going to have to say goodnight here. Thanks for both of you being with us. What a fast hour. Jim, I want to start with you. Just some final thoughts tonight.
Well, again, I just ultimately hope people will appreciate the benefits of Zylkene as a unique product, as an all-natural ingredient product that really is a tool, and it's a tool to help the animals better cope with challenges, to recognize these challenges are faced by all these animals, that they have both physical and behavioral impacts on these animals, and that we can provide a tool that will help the owner build a stronger bond with those animals.
Very good. Thanks for being here. Hope you'll come back and see us. This is the first time. We just scratched the surface, I know, so come back and see us. And Dr. Eric Alsop, you have the last word tonight.
Well, thank you, Mark. The thing that impacts me most about Zylkene, both in the research and in use, is the animals learn. So we're not giving somebody something they have to use forever. A crutch, we're giving them a tool and something that can actually help their horse deal with that issue and get over it.
Very good. Again, on behalf of Patrick Gotch, welcome to RFB TV. Great job. All right. And again, thanks for joining us, you as well tonight, especially you callers joining us on Rural America Live. We've been showing their website through the hour. And again, lots of questions. We weren't able to get to your calls. Check out that website. You'll learn a lot more. And again, Zylkene, another reason that RFD TV is rural America's most important network. Good night.